All right. How's everyone doing today? Me and Clayton are going to be talking about leak checking on this week's episode.
Yes. Yep.
So if you want
Leak
to start it off,
checking. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about before you do anything with leak checking, you have to check your leak detector, right? Because the last thing you want to do, and I have done this when I was younger, is leak check everywhere, spend hours just to go test your leak detector, and it ain't working. So there's a few ways you could test your leak detector. The easiest way I like to do it is just go up to the suction canister, take the Schrader off, take your Stratus, whatever you use, put it up there, and it should start reading something, right? We just want to make sure, do a test to make sure your leak detector is actually working because you don't want to be that guy, okay? There was a management company that did some supermarkets down here, and I went over to a store in Plant City. It was old R22 store, and they couldn't find leaks. They kept putting gas in, kept putting gas in. So I showed up. I brought two different kinds. I brought a Stratus and the big blue Bacharach leak detector, and I found like 15 leaks. And the tech at the time showed up. He brought his leak detector in. He's like, "I'm not finding nothing." So we took his leak detector over to the old suction canister. Nothing. And immediately his eyes got big, and he had leak checked like 8 stores before that, found no leaks. So don't be that guy. So
I would like to say one thing. So when I go on a call, let's say you get a service call. Now in the winter time, you might get, low receiver level calls because other issues, right? But in the summer, a low receiver call is 99% of the time going to be due to a leak or a bad
yes.
receiver gauge, right? But let's say you're pretty confident you have a leak. You go to the store. I'm going to start in the rack first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to go a once over on the rack and I'm looking for big leaks. I'm looking for big leaks because most of the time you're not going to have, 1,000 small leaks. Sometimes that's the case. But if you're working at a store consistently and you're not getting a lot of leaks all the time and magically now you have a call, you're looking for a big leak. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for big leaks in the rack. And then Clayton actually taught me this trick. Instead of like leak checking inside, some people may spend all this time pulling cases apart and actually leak checking every single joint inside of a case. What he told me how to do, and it works great, is just walk past the cases. Put your leak detector in the discharge air honeycomb, right? Just walk past and just have your leak detector right under the honeycomb and just walk. And you'd be so surprised that while you're walking, magically your leak detector will go and it will start picking something up. And then now you can go back, retrace your steps, and figure out what region has the biggest leak, right? And then go from there. But don't spend too long inside.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and that segues right into leak checking inside the store. And it's so nice now. When I was younger, with the H10 leak detectors and all, the way we used to leak check was the best thing to do is on medium temp, you're okay. But on low temp, you would shut all the compressors off, let the suction get up higher. But now, man, with the Stratus leak detector, it really is my favorite aside from the H10. The Stratus is so nice. It can pick up even tiny leaks. And like Justin was saying, you go through all the discharge air, man, and you'll get it in it. You put it and then you can switch it to parts per million and it'll tell you 30, then you can have them pull that section and 9 out of 10 times you'll find it. So I think we'll start talking about leak checking in glass doors. All right. We'll start there because that's the one nobody really likes to deal with. All right. Because here's the thing, back in the 2010 for that matter, when you were leak checking in there with the old H10 or even the old infrared leak detector without a screen, you'd pick it up on one side, and guess where you'd pick it up on the very far end. You have to pull every single thing. So the nice thing with the Stratus, go ahead.
So I have one thing to say about that. So on glass doors, guys, if you have a leak, let's just say on a 5 door, right? Same thing he's saying. You're going to have a leak all the way at the other side of the aisle, right? It's going to happen. The way I go about it is go off of your numbers. Okay, we're getting 5,000 parts per million here. We're only getting 1,000 down here. So let's be honest here. More than likely, it's going to be on the 5,000 side. You might
Yep.
have 50 doors, you know, 10 cases, 50 doors, but you're going to want to go to the side that has a higher count than the lower count, or else you're just wasting your time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And back to the glass doors, that's what you say. Once you find it, best thing to do is then you can have the store pull that section. Here's the thing, right? Nope, the store is never going to want to pull anything. So I like to wait till I'm 100% sure I need them to pull it. So just go ahead and have them pull the whole case. Look, and there's some common places in these glass doors that are going to leak. Common places are obviously that suction Schrader cap, okay, and the Schrader core. Those leak a lot. And also if, on the anywhere on the expansion valve, right? Anywhere there is not a soldered connection, it's a tightened connection with a wrench. Those can leak, and then with the go ahead.
Screens. So
yes,
the three main places I find leaks on a glass door, or really any case for that matter, is what he said with your suction service port, right? And the big reason why those leak a lot, guys forget to put the caps back on. Water gets in there. What happens when water freezes? It turns into ice. Ice is all over in that fitting, and then ice is going to expand and push that Schrader core, and it's going to break it, right? So make sure you put your caps on there. When you're putting screens back on, make sure your screens are tight on your expansion valves. Make sure your adjustment cap is on, because those leak all the time as well. You want to talk about our neg cases with the transducers and stuff as well?
Yeah. So obviously that's glass doors, and the glass doors, I don't think we need to break down each Hussmann, Hill Phoenix, blah 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 blah. Because
it's all the same across the board.
There are expansion valves in there. There's coils in there, everything like that. So what we're going to do is we'll move to bunker cases. Okay, older style bunkers. Before we get into those, the older style bunker cases, same thing. Easiest thing, go right in the discharge air, man. It's going to tell you right where you need to go. Now, newer cases, like Justin was saying here, is they have their bunker cases, and they put glass doors or slider tops on top of them. The reason they do that, it's more efficient. You can have less horsepower running it. But when they do that, they put Sporlan SC3 case controllers in them, right? And I'm sure there's other things they put in them, but most thing we deal with is that. So the SC3 case controller controls superheat. The only way to control superheat, the best way I should say, is to go off the suction pressure and suction temperature, right? Well, there is a transducer and there's a packed angle valve. So you have to remember that those leak all of the time. There was a store close to us that we used to service, and they put them in, and it was like we were there every single.
I found these things all the time. Make sure that transducer Teflon it, right? Teflon it on there. Make sure that transducer is tight, and make sure, because I think we all know packed angle valves leak right from the factory.
Yes, they do.
Most of the time they leak. So when you're using a packed angle valve, make sure that cap is on there, and that's Tefloned and tightened down. That way you're not going to have stupid leaks, because, I mean, there was 3 times that the rack got tanked to nothing. It was $4,000, $5,000 worth of refrigerant, because for a month, these cases were leaking out of a suction transducer or a packing.
And every single case is going to have one. You may have 8 cases, 8 bunkers. Every single one is going to have a suction transducer, another leak point. The main thing is, man, if you find a leak on one and it's a brand new installed case, you might as well go through them all and check them, because it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You want to make sure you are getting those leaks, right? And that is a big place there on those cases.
Also, in bunkers, if you're at a loop store means that you're going to have ball valves at the case or on top, depending on a bunker. It's going to be in the case, right? So you're going to have a lot of the time a liquid and a suction ball valve. Make sure those aren't leaking, because if you're not pulling all the product out of the case, you're mainly going to be working in the valve section, and those ball valves are not in the valve section. They're down the line in the case. So unless you're really pulling the whole thing, you're not going to see that, and you just want to make sure that you're checking that as well, because that's another leak point as well. It's ball valves.
Yes.
They get old. Store does a gas conversion. Now your ball valves are leaking everywhere. Just check that stuff.
Absolutely. And also remember, if you got to crank a ball valve cap on like you're the Hulk, then it's time to get a retrofit cap on that bad boy and, tighten it down. So, and also there may be times if it's leaking so bad, you might need to ride it up to get it replaced. Now that's not fun. So just remember, before you go writing up a bunch of stuff, think, would I want to do this? So just remember, what's it going to take to be able to do this? You know, he who doesn't have to do it writes up a lot. So just make sure you're always mindful of that. So I've been in that position before where I'm like, thanks whoever was here and who is not here. So yep. So we'll then that and another thing, and then so we went through the cases. Now we'll go to the racks. Okay.
Yeah.
And like Justin said, after you show up and you do a once over inside the rack to make sure there's no blowers, then you go through every single thing that could be leaking, right? And on a loop store, it's super easy because there's not that many circuits to check. It's just main liquid and suction headers, but man, go through everything. And here's the other thing to remember. It doesn't mean you made a mistake or you made a boo-boo if I went and leak check a store and 2 days later and found nothing, and Justin found something 2 days later. Okay, we got a store close to us that's was built in '96. Okay, obviously that's old for us, not old for a lot of people, but '96. And man, I fixed a few leaks, and then Justin will fix a few leaks, and we could have someone else. Just old store. So just always go through it and do not rush. You know, if you're there late at night, you do a once over to make sure nothing's bad, whatever. But when you were there leak checking, no shortcuts. It can either be done two ways, correct or fast. That's the only two
Yeah.
ways it can be done.
And another thing is what we're talking about with the Stratus for rack refrigeration. A Stratus, it's an Inficon Stratus leak detector. They're specifically designed for racks. And the reason why is you can pick up a leak, right? And then it will constantly recalibrate itself. With some of these other leak detectors, they will not tell you how much it's leaking. It will just say whether there's a leak or not, and it will constantly go off. The nice thing is, if people don't know about these leak detectors, it will help you get closer to where the leak is, because you'll pick up this big hit and then it will go down to nothing, and then you're in that area.
Yep.
And you'll dial yourself in. So just make sure, take your time, because we've had it before where some, like he was saying, you have a person leak check, the next day you're leak checking and you're going real slow over a compressor head, and now you have 2,000 parts per million coming off of a gasket or coming off
Yep.
of a fitting for a high pressure switch or whatever, because someone was waving their leak detector around too fast, and now you're not really getting in there and checking every single fitting.
And another little thing is obviously there's going to be situations if you show up at a store, the rack's super low, you got to get gas in it to get it running. But just make sure you don't get in the habit of just adding gas before you find some leaks. Okay. If you get there, the rack's at 0%, but it's running, start finding some leaks. You know, get a hold of supervisor, whoever, to get you the refrigerant out there. But don't just sit there and wait. Every minute you're at that store waiting for the refrigerant to get there, try to be busy leak checking, finding some leaks. You know, and a forgotten place that nobody wants to go to is the condenser. Okay. You want to go on the condenser, and, you know, you got all the knuckles you can go through, you know, and also the opposite side of the condenser where the supply discharge comes in. You want to check over there. There's packed angle valves, there's Schrader cores. You want to check all that stuff. And something to be mindful of. Justin brought up loop stores. Okay. The only bad thing about a loop store is there is valves and ball valves everywhere.
Everywhere.
There's a
they could be on top of boxes. We have found ball valves. So at this one store, at the time we didn't know this, but in the wall there was ball valves behind a case, and you'd have to go into the employee section of the store, and you'd have to go into a specific spot of the store, and it's down on the bottom by the floor in the wall. They actually have ball valves and EPRs in there.
Yes. Yep. We've had that. And then there's a set of, on top of the dairy cooler for this one specific store close to us, there's one of the circuit ball valves is up there. It's around the corner. And then there is, at another store we have, there is an island case. And if you look under near where the trim is, you could see somebody with really long arms. There's a liquid ball valve under there, you know, and just be mindful to check all those things. You know, if the rack's low, it went somewhere, right? And like in Florida, no, in Florida, obviously we've had some cold days. It does migrate to the condenser. I get that, but 99% of the time where we are, it's going somewhere. It's not just disappearing. The receiver gauge isn't stuck, so you don't beat it with a hammer. You know, there is places that it has gone, you know, and a lot of times the easiest place to check is where it's going to be. Little ball valves, this, that. The rack, tell you, man, if you can get the rack leak free as much as you can, it'll make your life so much easier, because a lot of it is in there. You know, a store that we have service contracts on, most of the leaks are in the racks or in the chillers or in the heat exchangers.
Yeah.
and all that
Hmm.
stuff. But it's not really that much in a store because most of the leaks are going to be where people got their grubby paws,
Yep.
got their
People are
sausage
touching.
hands all over everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to talk about on this is at specific stores you have piping in the ground, and we call it a pit. And this is
Hmm.
when piping goes from the rack into the foundation of the building in a passageway, in a trench, basically. We call it a pit, and the piping goes down and through, right? And this has happened many times. The stores that I work at the most, it's hard copper, but at certain stores Clayton used to work at, it's actually
It's all
soft
soft. Yeah,
copper. And as you guys can imagine, copper obviously erodes when water is on it all the time, right? Disintegrates. It gets very brittle. So when you have piping underground where it's cold and wet for 20 years, I think you can
hmm,
expect pinhole leaks everywhere. So we've
yes,
actually had to take piping and run it overhead into the store and down because we found leaks in this pit. And that's another one. If you've leak checked the rack, you've leak checked on top of the boxes, you've leak checked in the stores, you've leak checked everywhere, and you just can't seem to find where these leaks are. If you can find a spot where you have access to that pit, stick your leak detector right down in there, and sometimes you'll get a reading in the pit.
Abs- absolutely. And depending on the customer, how they want to check that, there's many ways you can isolate the whole line set, leave it for a few hours, mark your pressure. It's going to move a little bit because it's refrigerant, but man, if it's a big enough leak, you'll notice it will tank. We had a store up north of us where at the time the management company didn't want to bother leak check. They just kept having us. We ran almost all the lines overhead, and eventually the last one they found, but it was in the pit as well. And
Mm-hmm.
just be mindful of that when you're checking those things. And that's like I say, I'll say it once, say it 100 times. You can only leak check fast or correct. It's the only two ways. And
Right.
if you think you have a problem with your leak detector, say something. You know, your boss or whoever it is does not have ESP to know that there's something wrong.
Well, and the thing is a lot of people see leak checking as a nuisance, that they're above it.
Hmm.
Um, Especially with we do supermarket rack refrigeration, there's so many leak points. By you
Hmm.
doing a good job leak checking, even if you just do it once a month, it's going to save you so many headaches. Leak check, because no one wants to get called out in the middle of the night over a rack down because people haven't been leak checking simple stuff. And sometimes at stores, that's all it is. It's death by a thousand cuts. There's all these
Yep.
little leaks everywhere. There's no big blower leaks. But if you're not fixing these leaks preventatively, it's going to tally up to be a lot over a period of time. A lot.
Absolutely. And like the one store that we have 7 of them that have a service contract on them. Man, just every time we're at the store, I always ask everybody, I don't care if you take 5 minutes and walk through the rack house. Because that's where 90% of your leaks are going to be. They're going to be out in the store. It happens, but 90% of the time it's in the rack. So just even a quick once over, man. I'm not.
I actually have a funny story about this. Clayton told me one day I was finishing up at a store. It was not our store, and he said, just before you leave, just go into the rack and just do a quick leak check, so I can tell management for that store how their store's looking, right? How the racks are running,
Yeah,
whatever. So as soon as I powered my leak detector, I walk into the rack, and not 5 seconds later, my leak detector's maxed out and it's foggy in there. And I look, we have a huge blower leak on the discharge header, and that is less than 5 minutes in the rack
hmm
house. That kind of
and,
stuff,
and the
because
thing is,
people aren't paying attention.
yeah, and the thing is, he wasn't even there for that. He was there for getting some info off some glass tops on the Husman cases. They curved glass tops, they break. So the moral of the story is, take 5 minutes and check because you don't want to be that guy, and also you don't want your coworker, man. You work with these people. You don't want them to get called there right after. Now, stuff's going to happen, right? Everybody's human. Nobody's perfect. Everything is made by humans, which is imperfect, but always at least try to check. Just check little things, man, because it's just worst feeling in the world is if somebody comes after you and you knowingly didn't check. So just little things like that. Always leak check. Always, and always, always, always make sure your leak detector is working. You do not, you do not want to do that. And one other thing I wanted to share, for some reason, I don't know the answer to this. Maybe there's somebody who's a scientist who does. In the bakery cooler, for some odd reason, leak detectors go off. I don't know why. I don't know what
The
causes
yeast,
it. Yeah, the
the
yeast or
yeast.
whatever sets it off, man. And unbelievable. Just make you lose your mind, man.
Another thing with leak detectors, if your leak detector has a filter on it, so Stratuses have an actual filter on the tip. You can unscrew the tip. There's a filter. You'll notice if your filter gets dirty, your leak detector will have a very hard time picking up leaks. And if you get enough crap in there, it will actually pick up leaks just running in general. You could have it outside in an open space and it will pick up leaks because that filter is actually plugged up. So just make sure that, like he was saying, before you start really leak checking, just take a Schrader cap off, hold it right up to the Schrader core. You should pick something up if there's a cap on there. You should pick
Yes.
something up.
You want to make sure to check, man. Make sure to check. And also, one other quick thing, and I'm going to say this 100 times, I'm sure, before this is over. If there is a Schrader cap or a core leaking, if you think, should I grab my channel locks? No. Slap yourself with those channel locks. Replace the core and then put a new cap on it. Do not put channel locks or the juice on it and tighten that thing down. Right? There is going to be situations. We have a store with a rack down in Sarasota, and Justin knows what I'm talking about. There is a place where you can't get a core remover. Why? The liquid line comes up and the suction, you just can't fit it. I get it. There's going to be situations like that. But that is like the only store we have that has that. Any other time, it may take I don't care if it takes 15 minutes extra. Replace the core and replace the cap. Do not put pliers on there. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy.
And don't screw anyone else over, right? If it's a Friday and whatever people are into, we've worked with a lot of people that they couldn't be more, interested than just going home. 4 o'clock rolls around, they want to go back to their trailer park and drink their Keystone Light. If that's what you want to do, fine, but just don't screw anyone else over.
Yep.
If you're going to leave a store and it's not your problem to fix a leak, at least let someone know so someone doesn't get screwed over, because there's been countless times when this has happened.
Like that situation where Justin talked about earlier. I called the manager at that time of that area, told him, he said, now, whether he did anything or not, I don't know. But he said, my guys will take care of it. You just get on out of there. That's fine. We're covered. And I sent an email after that. That way everybody knew. But at least let someone know, right? At least let someone know. So, but no, I think this is good about leak checking, man. Just, it's easy. It is easy and it's not glorious, but man, it makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And then do you want to go into leak detectors in the boxes or anything like that, or no?
We'll save that for when we go through. We'll make one for walk-in boxes and we can how to go through those, how to check all those and everything. I think we'll save that for that.
Yeah, so just make sure that you spend time at every store leak checking, because realistically, you're going to get a lot of leaks fixed at the beginning, and then you're just going to have frivolous ones here or there. It's very rare that you're going to have blowouts, and a lot of the time blowouts happen on faulty parts and whatnot. So just
for instance,
get all the little stuff.
For instance, with the last blowout leak we had was at a store, and we had a condenser bracket break. Okay, there's nothing that could have prevented that, man. We check everything, it just happens. It just fell through, crappy condensers, and it fell through, and it dumped the whole rack. Stuff like that's going to happen, okay? But if it happens all the time, then that's not good. But this was once ever I've ever had that happen. Yes. So just always be mindful, be checking, be leak checking. So, but you got anything more you want to add to this?
No, just take your time. And I mean, I've gotten to the point where I just like to leak check. It's a nice thing. You get in your zone, do the whole store. You'll be happy that you did it. It's one of the easiest jobs you can do. So when someone gives you a ticket for leak checking, I don't see a big deal with it. Some people think they're above it, but it's very, very important. So just
absolutely.
Well, don't use bubbles instead of a leak detector. Don't think you could walk around like John Rambo with 2 bottles of bubbles and just spray every joint down with bubbles and think you're going to find leaks with that. Use a leak detector.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. See ya.